150, 170, 182.35. Watching Parker Schnabel extract enormous amounts of gold from the earth has many people enthralled with the gold rush. But what many failed to see are the faces that have gradually faded from his side. Lunch is not possible. What are you discussing? I'll have a coffee break during my lunch, and if that's not acceptable, then no. Then perhaps I shouldn't be here in the first place. Fuel and equipment are only one aspect of the millions of dollars spent on gold mining. People are used to measure it. Some of his most important crew members have been revolving due to the constant strain. Chris departed first, followed by Mitch. The question of what's next is raised by the account of who departed and why, which exposes the secret of Parker's extraordinary success. Parker Schnabel, the young king of the Klondike, was born into a family steeped in gold mining, to put it mildly. A Klondike legend, his grandpa John Schnabel worked the soil and claimed his claim with a grit that is the stuff of legends. Parker has achieved his goals with remarkable success. Many viewed Parker taking over the family business at the young age of 16 as a child playing in a sandbox, and I'm proud of him. They were completely mistaken. Parker's drive, which verged on obsession, went beyond simply carrying on his grandfather's legacy. He gave it a boost, transforming a modest business into a massive, earth-moving company that would alter the course of history. You see, he had mined well over $50 million worth of gold by the time he was in his mid-20s, and very astounding accomplishment. Let's check our progress. No way. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 185.15. You mean that's not a batter? Many people failed to see the tremendous pressure that accompanied all of that gold's gleam. A dozen crew members, many of them were old enough to be his father, depended on Parker for their livelihoods, and he was more than just a miner. The magnitude of his operation is the most startling fact. He was leasing thousands of acres of land at his height, and his weekly payroll, fuel, and parts costs could easily exceed $100,000. He was losing money every minute the machines weren't operating. Parker became a demanding, hard-driving leader as a result of this reality, pushing himself, his crew, and his equipment to the maximum every single day for months on end. Not everyone was cut out for this demanding atmosphere. The fissures appeared early on. Jeremy LeBlanc, a mechanic who departed after just one day because he couldn't keep up with the unrelenting pace, may have come to mind for viewers. Because he was from a metropolis and simply couldn't handle it. Jeremy is a prime example of a guy who asks himself, how'd I not weed that one out? He simply didn't know what was happening up there. Then there was Denise Savini, a more seasoned operator who was sacked as a result of his disruptive actions and conflicts with the crew. Simply put, things aren't going well. All we need is a bit more speed. I hope you get that. Not at all. Although these were early indicators. Parker was becoming known as a gold-finding genius, but he was also becoming known as a boss who was very challenging to work for. Your crew is your lifeblood in the Klondike, but no one tells you that. The season is brief, the job is harsh, and the seclusion is severe. You could lose a lot of money if you have a mechanical or personal breakdown. A few important, devoted veterans who could bear Parker's passion were the foundation of his success. That allegiance, however, was going to be put to the ultimate test. He was requesting that his group move mountains, and they did for a time. But there is a breaking point for everyone. A crew split up. Chris Dumit was the cornerstone of Parker's crew for many years. Chris was more than just a proficient operator. He serves the team's lifeblood. A seasoned youngster with a fast smile and a composed manner. A bunch of young, hard-charging miners looked up to him as a father figure. He had been Parker's steady hand and logical voice since the beginning. Many people were unaware that Chris was involved in more than just managing the gold room. He oversaw morale of the crew. He was the one who kept the team cohesive during the demanding 16-hour days and was able to soothe Parker. To put it gently, the operation was rocked by his departure. Chris didn't simply give up, you see. He went to work for Rick Ness, a former foreman of Parker's who had established a competing mining company. This was more than just a commercial decision. It was like being betrayed. It seemed unthinkable to supporters. Oh, Chris and Parker were a team. They had suffered from the constant pressure and the shifting dynamics of the crew. The gold chamber has to be cleaned completely. I am unable to accomplish it. I simply am unable to. If you can't keep it clean, why have a third plan? Chris wanted a change of pace and a less high-stakes, continuous stress job environment. Parker's operation was severely lacking in leadership and stability. In addition to expertise as a result of his departure, The competitors now employed the man who had supported Parker when he was a teenager. As if losing Chris wasn't bad enough, the crew was on the verge of losing another pillar. Parker was a mechanical genius, thanks to Mitch Blaschke. A qualified mechanic is not simply crucial in the far-flung Yukon, where a damaged machine might shut down an entire operation for days. They are everything. One of the best was Mitch. He was capable of fixing anything, frequently with just spare parts and his own creativity. Well, we lacked the necessary fittings to construct an entirely new hose. I decided to splice this one and attach a new hose segment to it. Therefore, it ought to be sufficient to restart it. He was responsible for keeping the enormous red wash plant functioning and was able to identify a dozer's issue based just on the sound of its engine. The extent to which Parker relied on him is the most startling fact. In charge of a fleet of outdated multi-million-dollar equipment that was continuously being pushed to the limit, Mitch was available around the clock. Mitch declared he was leaving after years of this unrelenting work. No major altercation or spectacular outburst occurred. It was a silent departure, motivated solely by exhaustion. Finally, the never-ending seasons of stress, dirt, and grease had caught up with him. He desired a life apart from the mine. The Yukon just did not allow him to spend time with his family. This was just another terrible blow for Parker. In Mitch, he was losing his mechanical backbone after losing his emotional anchor in Chris. He had lost the two men who had helped him go to the top. All of a sudden, the Golden Empire appeared quite vulnerable. Parker had to face a difficult pattern after losing two of his crew's pillars, the Big Nugget Ghost. A crisis that had shook Parker's group years before was painfully echoed by Chris and Mitch's departure. Prior to having Rick Ness as his right-hand man, Parker depended on the knowledge of Gene Cheeseman, a seasoned mining veteran. In his own way, Gan was a legend. A strong, no-nonsense foreman with a knack for finding gold and moving dirt. You mean, I want to put the plant away. I don't want to run off after reaching the goal, like we did the year before. We have a lot of work ahead of us in order to acquire this equipment, you know. Therefore, you're not attempting to do it perfectly when you come and start next spring. I'd like to do it correctly, merely attempting to complete things correctly. I simply believe that Parker and I have different approaches to problem solving. We have completely different approaches to problem solving. We have completely different notions about how to handle a crew, as well as how to manage people and equipment. It was a huge coup when Parker recruited him. He provided the young crew with a level of leadership and expertise they sorely needed. The collaboration was successful for a while. They had their most successful seasons to date and moved record volumes of dirt. However, not everything is as it seems. There was a power struggle simmering beneath the surface. I would prefer to avoid looking at Ed's office calendar to learn about your schedule. Send me an email with your thoughts, please. No, I told you that I would be available at that time, but I would rather that you send me an email. I simply wanted to let you know that I'm going to find out everything by going and giving you a heads up. Nothing's a secret, Parker, as I told you. Before we left, I informed you that we would observe the situation from the 15th to the 20th. Correct. Additionally, I would prefer that you send me an email regarding it. All right, well, one mentioned that we discussed it. So, yes, there's a lot of tail wagging going on here, you know. Parker was the boss, even though he was young. He made the final decisions and assumed the financial risks. Gan frequently clashed with Parker's bold, high-risk tactics because of his decades of experience. What began as a professional dispute gradually turned into outright annoyance. Parker felt his authority as the employer was being questioned, while Gan felt his experience was being disregarded. The two men's frequent disagreements over decisions on the mine site portrayed the tension on screen. Respect is crucial in the high-stress environment of the Klondike, but no one tells you this. Gene believed his youthful supervisor wasn't treating him with the deference his experience demanded. At last, the ongoing disputes and the sense of being undercut came to a head. Parker is no longer with me. Next year, I will not return. He called me this morning to let me know that he wants to move on and doesn't anticipate returning for the following season. And yeah, that really got to me. He's my mentor, you know. During a pivotal season, Parker was left without a foreman when Gene G. Cheeseman resigned. The first significant flaw in Parker's managerial approach was his departure. It demonstrated that if a top-tier crew member felt mistreated, even extraordinary accomplishment and enormous gold totals couldn't keep them on board. Parker's results have a lot of fans, but they frequently fail to recognize the human cost. Gan's passing was a painful lesson, but Chris and Mitch's subsequent departures posed a challenging query. Had it taught Parker anything? Was he destined to make the same mistakes again, alienating his most valued individuals in his unrelenting quest for more gold? A reminder that an empire is only as strong as its supporters. The ghost of Gene Cheeseman's departure hung over the mine. A man could be broken by losing legends, but Parker had an option: fold or start over from scratch, assembling fresh crew. Parker Schnabel was forced to make a decision after several of his most dependable and seasoned crew members left. He could have acknowledged that the pressure was too great and reduced the scope of his operation. He did what he typically does. Instead, he intensified. To put it plainly, Parker's solution to the problem was to demonstrate that his empire was based on his unwavering drive to succeed, rather than on any one individual. Even though they were devastating, the departures compelled change. Parker, the young talent, had to grow up to be Parker, the experienced boss. Gold is no longer the only question that looms over the Klondike. It concerns the core of his business. The evacuation was cruel, you see. There were several people departing. The dissolution of his inner circle was methodical. The first was the renowned foreman Gene Cheeseman, a seasoned pro whose traditional wisdom was invaluable. He quit because he was so fed up with Parker's unrelenting, even dangerous managerial style. And then there was Parker's long-suffering right-hand guy, Rick Ness. His presence down here is not something I dislike. It's because, in an attempt to undermine you, he consistently ignores significant advancements. No one wants to be hassled for busting their ass. Guy didn't simply resign. Instead, he started his own mining company and turned their working relationship into a sour feud. And lastly, the two most powerful blows: the departure of Chris Dumit, the quiet, unwavering foreman who served as the crew's moral compass, and Mitch Blaschke, the mechanical prodigy who could essentially repair machines with his bare hands. Many failed to recognize that these were not isolated events. They were signs of something more serious. There were rumors that Parker's unquenchable ambition had led to a culture of burnout, or the incessant need for more eroded loyalty. Was he creating a high-stakes revolving door, or an empire based on gold mining? Parker took the offense rather than retreating. He started making significant investments in a fresh crop of miners. He attracted new recruits, young, inquisitive men who viewed him as a living legend and were not only eager to emulate his fierce work ethic. I suppose I'm fortunate to be able to spend my days sitting in these incredible toys, which is my passion. Gold, well, that's merely an added benefit. This quietly changed the crew's whole dynamic. He was no longer a young boy attempting to impress more mature, seasoned men. He was now training his new court as the established king. He had to radically alter his own role as well. The most startling aspect is that Parker had to take over as the primary mechanic after Mitch left. In the middle of a frigid night, he had to spend more time with a wrench in his hand, smeared in grease, manually diagnosing complicated hydraulic failures, a task Mitch had always taken on for him. A revised agreement was essential to keeping this new crew together. Hours would be longer, and the job more severe than before, but the prize, a piece of the gold, would be genuinely transformative. The most contentious, crazy idea circulating in the Yukon is that Parker had to completely alter his business plan. He reportedly stopped paying his key personnel salary and meager bonuses and started giving them a sizable portion of the earnings, turned them from employees into partners. This action, which might have cost him millions up front, was a last-ditch attempt to purchase the allegiance he could no longer demand via friendship alone. He needed people who cared about the result, not just the salary. Many were unaware that a core group of committed individuals persisted in spite of the well-publicized departures. In the background, there were always unsung heroes: the camp workers, the rock truck drivers, and the dozer operators who performed the hard labor year after year without the fame of television. These individuals were the ones who actually kept the operation's wheels turning. Furthermore, Parker's success not only persisted but also increased. He continued to break his own records, bringing in tens of millions of dollars worth of gold. He demonstrated that the real basis of his success was his system and his own nearly superhuman ability to read the ground, a talent inherited from his grandpa, John Schnabel. The most startling revelation, though, is how he was able to improve his gold totals while using a crew that lacked experience. According to insiders, Parker made a significant multi-million-dollar investment in state-of-the-art prospecting equipment following the departures. He was given an almost unfair advantage by sophisticated water analysis tools and advanced ground-penetrating radar. Not only was he mining more intelligently, he had a technological advantage over his competitors when it came to mining, transforming the Klondike's risk into a well-thought-out scientific extraction. This made sure his less experienced crew was always digging in the appropriate place by enabling him to identify the richest pay streaks with surgical accuracy. Finding gold is no longer the only aspect of Parker Schnabel's story. The question is whether he can create anything that will actually last. Legends like Chris, Mitch, and Gene left, but his narrative did not finish there. They were parts of a larger, more intricate story about the agonizing development of a leader and the real price of ambition. The most important question in the realm of gold mining is what Parker's future holds. Is Parker Schnabel a brilliant gold miner who has to make difficult decisions, or is he a strict boss who will eventually drive away his best employees? Tell us what you think. For more, like and subscribe.